Okay, so top of the hour, go ahead and put it on slideshow. So thank you and welcome everyone to this session. We're excited to be here today for the second workshop in the series on cultivating leadership for change and justice in the geosciences. I'll say a few words about how we will, for you as participants in the meeting. So we ask you, if you're not a speaker in the first part of the meeting, to please go ahead and mute yourself and also go off video for now. We will show the panelists during the panel discussion. We will have a chance to go into breakout rooms where you will certainly have your video on, where we will have some rich discussions led by a facilitator. And then when we come back into the final session, we will also have our videos on for final discussions. So happy to have you here today. And with that, unless there are other questions, you can type questions in the chat box at any time. But we will have a Q&A session more towards the end of the meeting, as opposed to doing the first portion. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our host and moderator, Lisa White. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Billy. And hello, everyone. We really appreciate you joining us this morning. We know for some of us, many of us here on the West Coast, it's an early morning, but we also know how important this topic is when we discuss the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the geosciences. You know, hiring and diversifying faculty has to be a pillar of any diversity of inclusion plan, but we also know it's among the most challenging. And it's for this reason that we wanted to focus on this topic today with experts who have made strides in this area, but also know too well how difficult it can be to not only develop a plan for diversifying the faculty in academic departments, but sustaining the plan and getting buy-in. So what we'll do throughout our couple of hours today, we'll be hearing from a number of panelists, including Lee Kemp from Pennsylvania State University, Don Sumner from University of California at Davis, Jen Pierce at Boise State, Aaron Velasco at University of Texas at El Paso, Megan Elwood Madden at the University of the University of Oklahoma, and Joshua Villalobos from El Paso Community College. So in just a minute, as we bring our panelists forward, we'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves as I ask each of them questions about issues, challenges, and also successes in their departments. And we want to spend a good amount of time during our couple of hours today in breakout session. So after we hear from the panelists, we want to hear from you. So we have a number of facilitators that will guide the breakout sessions, and we'll be putting you into breakout rooms, and we'll be using Google Jamboards for all of you to record your responses, and that will certainly help inform us as we all try to make progress in this area, and it'll certainly help our organizational team as we plan for additional workshops. And then we'll make sure that we have time at the very end to get some feedback from the breakouts, talk about next steps. We'll be encouraging you to answer a survey, if you would, about your experiences in this session. And we look forward to keeping in touch with all of you and also being able to try to move the needle on this very challenging aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And now we'll start with our panel discussion. And so with each of the panelists, there'll be a series of different questions that do speak to some of the specific both challenges and opportunities that they've faced at their departments. And so we'll use that to help guide and inform the rest of our session here before we go to breakouts. So Lee, I'll start with you. And I know at Penn State, It's been recognized really as one of the most diverse departments in the country, well, particularly when it comes to the atmospheric science section of the department. And so we'd like to know, how has this informed the successes at Penn State, informed the approaches you've taken to diversifying faculty within other departments of the school there? And in particular, if you can speak to both challenges in retaining some of the diverse hires that you've identified, as well as some of the ongoing challenges in just balancing what's expected of the faculty of color in your school and in your department, particularly when it comes to service work.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Lisa. Really glad to be here. And let me start by saying I can't take credit for the successes in our Department of Atmospheric Science and Meteorology at Penn State. I'm now the Dean of the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences, but at the time that the most recent diverse hires were made, I was the department head in our geosciences department. So we have a college that has both geosciences and meteorology and atmospheric science departments. And now I'm dean of that college. So the Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science has a long tradition in focusing on minority diversity, having graduated the second African-American PhD in meteorology, Dr. Warren Washington. And we continue to provide national leadership around diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly through the work of Dr. Jose Fuentes, who's been with the department for many years, and most recently has been chairing the NSF Committee on Equal Opportunities in Science and Engineering. So, with this strong tradition, I think the department's created a very supportive environment, one that facilitates recruiting diverse candidates. But this most recent hiring has been very in a purposeful context of growing diversity in the faculty ranks, and it's been successful. I think it all starts with a strong commitment among the department faculty, and this department certainly has that. That's been key, and good, strong leadership from the department head, Dave Stensrud, focusing on the challenges and opportunities around diverse faculty hiring. I think it also helps that the college, my predecessor, Bill Easterling, strongly committed to growing diversity in the college, and then all the way up the administrative ladder, and including our president, Eric Barron. Many of you know Eric, former dean of our college, a climate scientist, and a great advocate for our efforts in increasing diversity in the geosciences. So all this support allowed the department to take advantage of some opportunities. There was a particular effort by Fuqing Zhang, who unfortunately is no longer with us, really focused on identifying diverse candidates, and so the department developed a program of bringing people in for seminars, informal way to get to know them, and for them to get to know the faculty, staff, and students of the department, college, and of course Penn State, middle of Pennsylvania, in a rural setting. We'd like to get people here to see what the opportunities might be if they were to come to Penn State. And so this was an informal seminar, but it involved discussions around the possibilities of coming from Penn State, or coming to Penn State. And then we have good support from the university. There's a President's Opportunity Fund that provides 50% of the salary for diverse hires. And so through this program over the last several years, the department was able to make multiple hires where there were limited opportunities in the department otherwise to make those hires. So this is just, these are small numbers, but they make a big difference in a department. And this highlights the fact that the pool is just not that diverse. In our college, 5 departments, including engineering departments in our college, we only have 1 department with a minority affirmative action goal. In other words, where the diversity of the faculty isn't as diverse as the PhD candidate pool. And that's not in our engineering and physical science departments. That's in our geography department, a blend of social and physical sciences. So ultimately, we do need to do more to interest a more diverse group of budding young scientists in the geosciences. You also asked me, Lisa, to talk a little bit about retention and in particular burnout and service loads among our faculty of color. And I think, as we've seen in this last year, there are a lot of allies among the white majority, faculty, staff, and students in the department and throughout our college. And many of our faculty and staff are stepping up, pressing for reform, and willing to put in the hard work. We've conducted a college climate survey, and now we're in the implementation phase. And that is emphasizing inclusion and belonging. And so the workload is being distributed. There's also a really important role for administrators, for the department heads, and for me as a dean to step up and work in this area as well. So I think it's been an effort across the board to take on leadership and do the hard work to make sure that the work of diversifying our college doesn't fall on our diverse faculty, staff, and students.
Great, thank you so much for that, Lee. And it's fitting that we would start with you and the role that you play in your leadership position at Penn State. So much does depend on deans and administrators to guide and carry through any plan, and also to manage the expectations when we are making strides. So thank you for that. And next, I'll introduce and invite Don Sumner from UC Davis to highlight some of the advances there on both the college level or departmental level in geosciences, but also university-wide through the Strength Through Equity and Diversity program. So Don, we look forward to you sharing what your experiences have been through that NSF Advanced funded program to fund workshop and explore best practices around hiring diverse faculty, and look forward to you also highlighting what strategies, particularly around data, are important in guiding these efforts. So thank you, Dawn.
It's really a pleasure to be here this morning. And as Lee mentioned, a lot of times increases in diversity emerge from the efforts of individual faculty members or small groups of faculty, and that commitment. And that's certainly true in my Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences. The successes we've had with recruiting and maintaining the diversity we do have is really a commitment from individual faculty members. And I think one of the big challenges is how do we actually expand that to be more systemic across departments and across the university. And one of the things that has happened at UC Davis as part of an NSF Advanced program was to create this Strength Through Equity and Diversity committee called STED. And I want to acknowledge that Louise Kellogg was one of the founding members of this committee and really helped steer it. The idea is to use the best social science data and studies to understand why faculty in their hiring committee processes discriminate against underrepresented groups of people. And there's a really significant literature about where our biases come in, how they can maintain being unconscious, and how we can design practices for hiring that help reduce those biases. And so the STED committee, every person who's on a faculty search committee at UC Davis is required to take a 2-hour, it used to be 2-hour, we shortened it now that it's on Zoom, but a workshop from the STED committee. And we as faculty members give this workshop to our colleagues. And we include things like a description of some of the biases that are particularly common. So for example, there's an anchoring bias where once a search committee member sees one item in an application, they sort of anchor on that and said, but this person has a paper or 3 papers in science. Or another bias, there's also cognitive schemas, the way we think about things. For example, a lot of times in search committee practices, the search committee chooses the person, or an individual on that chooses the person they want to get the job, and then they shift the standards around so that that person comes out the top. And so what we do is we talk about these biases, and then we discuss ways you can design the search process to limit the effects of those biases. And when I'm done speaking in chat, I'll put in a couple of resources and our webpage where you can see some of this data. One of the things that we've really struggled with is how to implement the evaluation of diversity, equity, and inclusion statements into the search process. UC Davis did an experiment with some cross-department or cross-college searches where they applied a lot of best practices. And one of the things they implemented was to review the diversity, equity, and inclusion statements in a blinded form at the beginning of the applicant evaluation process. And that led to the hiring of a number of faculty of color. And that was taken, the review of the DEI statements was taken as a reason there was less bias in these searches, but there were many things applied. One of the things the STED committee has discussed, and we have different opinions on, is whether that actually is a best practice for general searches at the department level, because the DEI statements can trigger biases and prejudice against candidates of color, but they can also be used to really understand what candidates can bring to the department in terms of increasing inclusivity. And so our committee really tries to base our recommendations on data, and the evaluation of DEI statements is so new that we don't know how they work and how to include them. And so this is one of the things that I think experience from a lot of you is really necessary to understand how to use the DEI statements to really bring in the faculty who will do the most to make our departments equitable, inclusive, and supportive of people from all backgrounds. So I find the STED committee has been this really great step. I think the feedback we've gotten, we've definitely gotten some pushback from some faculty, but most of our feedback is really appreciative from faculty understanding better where their own biases come from. And I have to say that having 9 colleagues on campus that I can talk about these issues with in depth for hours at a time has just been incredibly beneficial to me as well. And I'm really pleased to be here and hear more about the discussions and ideas that you have.
Thank you, Dawn, much appreciated. And we know how common it is, of course, during the application process to use diversity statements, and there are just ongoing issues with that. And We appreciate, again, all that you've shared, as well as the reminders we need of the role that biases play and how we evaluate packages. So our participants, of course, will get opportunities to also share from their departments what's been going on there. So next I will invite Jen Pierce from Boise State University to introduce herself and also answer a number of questions that I'm sure will be helpful to the attendees. Jen, you are at a university in a largely rural state, but I know that you have a recent NSF award that will support rewarding faculty to develop more widely as inclusive leaders, and also work department-wide to develop roadmaps for success that perhaps will be transferable to other departments. So we invite you to speak about some of those both opportunities and challenges at Boise State.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks so much to all the folks who put a great deal of work into making this workshop happen. I'm here actually coming to you live from the Teton Valley in Idaho. Teton Valley is home to the Shoshone, Bannock, Blackfoot, Crow, Flathead, Gros Ventre, and Nez Perce tribes. They used this area as community hunting and fishing grounds, and I'm really honored to be here in the headwaters of the Snake River. I also just wanted to acknowledge that Idaho is not the most diverse state. About 1 year ago, 28 Republican legislators in our state legislature here in Idaho sent our newly hired Boise State University president a letter telling her to quit, quote, wasting money on efforts to promote diversity and inclusion at the university. These legislators then shot down the budget for higher education in our state and are still targeting DEI efforts in the state of Idaho. So we have a long way to go. Hearing what is happening at UC Davis and Penn State is a huge inspiration, and I will really be looking towards you, Dawn and Lee, to help guide us as we try to catch up. So that said, huge thanks to NSF and the Gold EN Eager Project. What we're doing here at Boise State and in our geosciences department is we are looking at ways to value faculty contributions to DEI, really through intentionally changing the workload policy to reward inclusive leaders. So we will be starting this project again to change the workload policy in the geosciences department, which is a wonderful department. And again, Dawn and Lee both pointed towards individuals as leading the charge and to promote DEI. And I would really like to give credit for this idea to my colleague, Nancy Glenn, who I hope is out there in the workshop. This was her idea. This was her idea to say, hey, we can't just say, pat on the back, good job for promoting DEI. We really need to change our policy to reward those efforts in the same way that we reward peer-reviewed publications and grants. Also like to acknowledge my other colleagues, Donu Llewellyn, who is at the Institute for Inclusive and Transformative Scholarship at Boise State, and Tasha Souza for the Center for Teaching and Learning, who have the tools and training to make this happen. We will be implementing this at Boise State, starting our project in January to make those changes in our workload policy to reward inclusivity and promote our leaders in our geosciences department. Then I'll be working with my colleague Ben Crosby at Idaho State University to test this, to see if these mechanisms are transferable to other institutions. So I am really looking forward to this. I also just want to acknowledge that I know for many of you out there, this is not a normal year. right? This has been extraordinarily difficult for many folks. I have my 8-year-old and 10-year-old downstairs, hopefully, logging into their school platforms. And many of you have taken on multiple jobs during this time. This is a time that I found as a professor and mentor and colleague that it's especially important to support our students of color and our other faculty members. I had one underrepresented student in my class. He said, and he sent me an email. He said, Dr. Pierce, I'm really sorry. I can't be in class today. My grandfather is sick and my parents are working and I need to take care of my 5 younger siblings. And I said, that's fine. You do what you need to do. And I think all of us need to take that time to tell our students and our colleagues, hey, we're here for you. What can we do to support you right now? So with that, I just would like to say thank you so much for including me in this panel. And I am really looking forward to these discussions.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for reminding us just what a challenging year it's been. And I'm just all the more impressed that so many members of our community that are here have been able to just keep the focus on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion matters. Just, no excuses. We really need to continue to prioritize this. Well, I'm really excited to have Erin Velasco from the University of Texas at El Paso speak with us next. And Erin, I know we as long-term friends and colleagues have discussed the challenges to recruiting diverse faculty. There's so much we often hear about the lack of diversity in the pool and we can't find anybody, just go on and on and on, right? So if you could share with us, what has your experience been with increasing just the diversity of the pool and challenging others, challenging both your department and others to look beyond those excuses to make the kind of real change needed?
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to have this venue. I just want to go back to why we're here. And why we're here right now having this discussion has to do with the murder that happened with George Floyd. But for me, it started earlier than this. And it started earlier for me when I was growing up as a kid in Los Angeles and fearing the police more than anything. But what really started for me was on August 3rd, 2019, when we had a mass shooting here in El Paso, Texas. And many lives were lost, 23, in fact. And although it depressed me for months, I came back rejuvenated, and I'm very happy that we're having these conversations now. And let's just not lose that momentum. As far as recruiting faculty, you're not. If I hear this often, and I'm going to challenge everyone that says this, you're not looking. And the reason why you're not looking is because are you attending conferences like the SACNA, Society for Advancement of Native Americans and Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science, or the National Association of Black Geoscientists? Are you going to those meetings? Are you actively participating? There's people on this call that are looking for work, and I told her I wouldn't call her out, but she's on, and that's Melissa Diaz, for example, who's a postdoc. And I know a series of people, and it's because I'm in that community, because I care and I show up to these meetings, and I see the progression. I have students now that are on their way and laying those foundations. So if I hear that again, I'm saying you're not trying hard enough. The other challenge with that is that in many cases, students are ostracized or faculty are ostracized for going to these meetings. Oh, that's not a scientific meeting. It's way beyond science. And so, that's something that's an attitude that needs to change. There's tons of talent out there. You can go on a website right now and find some up and coming scientists on the Society of SOLAS website, Society of Latinx, Hispanics, and Earth and Space Sciences. There's a lot of people out there. There's always been people out there. It's just that you're not, if you expect, people to come to you because you're Penn State. I'm sorry, don't put Penn State on the spot. I have really great colleagues there. Don't expect that. And there's lots of reasons. And let me tell you what some of those reasons could be. One of the considerations that when you do that hiring process is that people of color have different concerns. am I going to go into a community that's welcoming to me or in my family? I mean, is it even safe? I mean, maybe it's not safe in Boise State for my family there. And, those are the kind of things that we have to consider that no one else really has to consider. And so those are the challenges that we face from that side. So when you say an equal process, we want a fair process. Well, if you're not considering the whole human, is that fair? And so you need to consider those kind of things. But I will share a story about UTEP. I joined UTEP in January of 2002. And the reason why I joined UTEP is because I was actively recruited. And the reason why I was actively recruited to be there was because the president of our university, whose mission was access and excellence in El Paso, basically did not let our department hire any other faculty, and they hired a minority. And when I arrived, people would joke with me, other colleagues in other departments, in other colleges, in fact, would call geology Iowa. And that's because we weren't diverse. And yet we serve an 80% Hispanic population. Well, through that recruitment process, 3 minorities were hired. And at the same time, we had an advanced grant. It wasn't mine, but others had contributed. And I would argue now that we had the most diverse geology department in the country. And what was done, though, is that actively recruiting. Me and myself, I would call people up, apply to this job, apply to this job. Some would turn me down, but I wouldn't give up. And we would get those diverse applicant pools. And there hasn't been a case since in the last 10 years where we had a really strong, diverse pool of outstanding candidates. So, but you have to have the support. In that position, I've served as chair, I've served in the dean's office, I've served in the provost office, is that you do have to have that sort of agreement up and down the chain. You can't do this alone. I'm just a lonely faculty now. Honestly, I can't do any of those things without the support of upper management. So it really takes a committed effort. In our case, it really was sparked by our president, past president, Natalicio. And she really made a commitment for access and excellence and really made us as a department very unique because we're on the border. We're an 80% Hispanic population. We serve Hispanic PhDs and students in the geosciences. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I know we can always count on you to speak the truth and share exactly what's going on. And your comments, they bring to light what many of us have seen, where just because an institution may be Hispanic serving, minority serving in HBCU, doesn't automatically mean, particularly in the geosciences, we're going to see that diversity expectation extended there. And I love your analogy that, geosciences at UTEP was like Iowa, where it's like you walked into a different state when you came into the department. So the work and the struggle continues, but it's been great to see the efforts and changes there. Next, I'll invite Megan Elwood Madden from the University of Oklahoma to share some recent experiences and rewards. And Megan, I know also in your department and you've been a recent recipient of an NSF Golden Award. And so we look forward to you sharing how your effort in your department is recognizing faculty who have JEDI experience. So experience in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yeah, thank you. So we just like Jen recently got one of these Golden Eager Awards to look at how can we as a geoscience community value and reward JEDI work amongst our faculty and all faculty, right? That we know that faculty of color have historically carried much of the burden for doing this work. And in fact, if we looked at the facilitators for this panel even, right, that there is a strong weight that has been placed on our colleagues of color. And how do we, number one, recognize the work that they're doing and reward them for that work, but also get more of the majority people to contribute to that work to lessen the burden so that people of color can be working on research and teaching and being the amazing scholars that they are and not being swamped by all these service requests. So that's kind of our goal, is how do we change the culture in geosciences to be asking the majority group to step up and then rewarding them when they do? And also, how do we recognize and reward faculty who come in with a diverse experience and a diverse perspective in the hiring process, as well as through tenure, promotion, and annual evaluation. So our project is actually going to be kind of nationally focused. We're going to do a national survey of geoscience departments to find out what the demographics are. When I was writing the proposal, I was shocked to find that I could not find anywhere race and ethnicity data for geoscience faculty in the United States. That data exists for PhD students. It exists for undergrads. It does not exist for faculty. So one of the initial goals of the project is to find out what our baseline is so that we can track ourselves and hold ourselves accountable, make sure that we are going through the effort of looking, right, and increasing those numbers. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to survey faculty to find out whether or not they are motivated to participate in JEDI work, and whether or not, so motivation is one thing. I think many of us are motivated to do the work. I think very few of us are actually rewarded for doing the work. And that motivation mismatch with the reward structure can lead to cynicism and burnout, which negatively affects the JEDI allies, as well as the diverse faculty that we currently have in the geosciences. And then finally, what are the obstacles to incorporating more these valuations of JEDI work in annual evaluation? So when I get my annual evaluation, diversity, equity, and inclusion work is only included in service, and it's a very minor part, and everybody knows that service doesn't matter, right? That's what we're told from the very beginning when we join the tenure track, right? So how do we change that culture? How do we more clearly integrate JEDI work, the JEDI work that is ongoing in research, that's ongoing in teaching, right? Inclusive teaching practices are JEDI work. Building a diverse cohort of practitioners and research scientists, right? For one of these big collaborative proposals, that takes work, and faculty should be rewarded for doing that work. So these are things that we're going to be tackling, and then at the end of the project, hopefully we'll be able to share some best practices with the community, both in terms of how do we value JEDI work in hiring. Diversity statements have become kind of popular, right? But we'd also like to investigate how we can ask more explicit questions about potential faculty members' DEI experience and work, like their demonstrated efforts in DEI areas, instead of just kind of a general diversity statement, which can be, frankly, very hard to evaluate. But if we have more concrete things, like within our actual job ads, key responsibilities and preferred and necessary qualifications that involve DEI work, that may be a little bit more easier to evaluate as a search committee. And then finally, I just want to give a plug. The School of Geosciences at the University of Oklahoma has 3 open tenure track positions. We strongly value DEI efforts, and we've tried to communicate that clearly within our job ads, and our search committees will be looking for those things as they are evaluating candidates. And we're trying our best, Erin, to go out and find the candidates. And I appreciate your statements, and we hope to step up to that challenge.
Thank you, Megan. That was great. And plugs are welcome. You're searching right now. Erin mentioned there's a postdoc joining us in the session that's looking for work. And we are a really terrific network, all of us. And so we hope that many connections continue. And Megan, we so look forward to the work that your project will produce. I mean, we just can't say enough about the importance of changing the culture and how we need to move DEI work beyond this thought that it only belongs in service, that somehow it doesn't contribute to the rest of what expectations are in tenure and promotion around evidence-based practices and real research in our science that we know is important in leading to promotion in papers and what have you. So definitely look forward to that. Next I'm excited to introduce Joshua Villalobos from El Paso Community College. And many of us have been working both formally and informally with community college partners. And we're starting to recognize how key the students that start their degree programs in community colleges are important to our diversity goals. And when it comes to addressing challenges to diversifying faculty, Joshua, we look forward to you sharing what people who are interested in tenure track to your college positions can do to prepare themselves for applying, again, with the overarching goal of really recognizing how important two-year colleges are in training future geoscientists. So welcome, Joshua.
Great, it's great seeing you, Lisa, and thank you everybody for having me here. So I'm really glad to be on this panel, especially with Erin. Erin, you know, we've done some great work together between El Paso Community College and UTEP, and I'm actually a very proud product of UTEP as well. Interestingly, so I was not, unfortunately, at UTEP while Erin was there teaching. But when I was there, we did not have a very diverse faculty pool when I was in my graduate and undergraduate courses. But you know, the faculty who were there, they were very in tune with the challenges that minorities face, especially Hispanics. And I think just having them understand those challenges, what was huge inspiration for me. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to that, as well as my students who are now going to UTEP. Having that diverse faculty pool now, I can see that huge difference that they now have in terms of having somebody of their same ethnicity up inside the classroom as well. In terms of, you know, the community college system, I think we play an extremely important role in diversification of the geosciences, primarily because, as most of you know, the community colleges have a very high percentage of minority students. One of the challenges that we have is engaging those students into the geosciences. Many tier colleges or community colleges do not have identifiable geoscience programs. El Paso Community College is one of a handful of ones that not only has an identifiable geoscience program, we also have an associate's degree in geosciences, which really helps us get our students to matriculate from EPCC to UTEP. In terms of hiring, you know, we don't really have a really big issue in terms of getting diversity within our faculty. One of my ideas in terms of that is because as many of you read that 2018 paper in the geoscience Nature, saying that there's been no progress made in the geosciences in 40 years. That paper pretty much discussed the diversity within the PhD program. We didn't really look at other levels of education. And so one of the things that we've noticed is that there have been really big strides in terms of diversifying the geosciences in some of those other degrees, such as associates, bachelors, as well as masters. And so for most community colleges, the terminal degree is the master's degree. And so we find that we do have a lot of diverse hires into the geosciences because of that terminal degree, especially for the geosciences. We have several Hispanics inside our own department, and we even have a few PhD Hispanics coming from UTEP within our department. But I think the biggest contribution community colleges can have in this is really forming those relationships like the ones that we have between EPCC and UTEP in engaging our students early on in those intro courses to get engaged into the geosciences and finding some way to get them involved in early research while at the community college, while they have that comfort level with the small classes, the low tuition, and getting those students to really get engaged at the community college level, as well as starting to get them familiarized with what the expectations would be at the university setting within the geosciences. So I think we've done some phenomenal work over the past decade between EPCC and UTEP, and I think the results speak for themselves. We have right now, currently, we have about 64 geology majors at El Paso Community College, and we're actively trying to get our students to do research and look at attending UTEP for those degrees. So I'm really looking forward to discussing the information regarding what we do and what some of the best practices are that we have.